sympathetic to the United States and wants a restoration of good relations with us. So the question is, this movement having been proven to exist in the recent, I won't even call them elections, in the recent attempt to fake an election in Iran, whether we can synchronize our policy so as to say that we're both for the democratization and the denuclearization of Iran, since the two things are connected. Iran can only come back into the Comity of Nations when it is a democracy and when it is proven that its nuclear program is only for peaceful and economic purposes. After all, we're willing to build them, the reactors. We're willing to give them all the centrifuges they need on the assurance that that's all they want. A very generous offer. Well, the president's line on this is that it would be nice to have the Islamic Republic of Iran, as he put it, back in the family of nations. Well, my response to that is, it's because it's an Islamic Republic that it can't be in the Comity of Nations, because it's an Islamic Republic that it maltreats and oppresses and tortures and kills its own people. And also it's because it is an Islamic Republic that it conducts this covert, insane nuclear operation designed for blackmail against its mainly Sunni Arab neighbors, by the way. It's not really intending, at least at first, to attack Israel, let alone us. But it will be used to blackmail the Gulf states that have less capacity to defend themselves. So that the problem with the president's policy is that he believes that the disagreement between ourselves and the Islamic Republic arises from a misunderstanding. And I can't be persuaded that that's really true. It's not a cultural or psychological matter. It's a radical difference of interest. And nothing is really going to be able to happen until the Iranian people are allowed to interfere in their own internal affairs. So we have a government we can show is their choice. And until we can be certain that they're not simply running out the clock of diplomacy in order to equip themselves with illegal weaponry. So, yes, that could be described as a litmus test. Calidor, I can't decode that name, asks if I and my fellow horsemen, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, and Samuel Harris, are sometimes referred to collectively as new atheists. What does this mean to you? Do you embrace it? Or do you hold there's nothing particularly new? Well, and he asked me also if I agree with the mention of the word brights as a definition of the unbeliever. The Four Horsemen was a fairly cheap idea, was my own. Actually, it's supposed to be the Four Horsemen of the Counter-Apocalypse. It's just a happy coincidence that four of us published books around the same time. But the inclusion is absurdly flattering to me. Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Samuel Harris are great men of science in their respective fields, anthropology and neuroscience. In Richard's case, preeminently biology. They would be great educators, and educators for the theory of evolution and for human reason, even if they'd never said a word about religion. But they all decided that in the present crisis, where we're threatened on all sides by different sorts of theocrat, mad Israeli settlers, Islamic jihadists, Christians who want to have garbage taught in American schools, and so forth, a papacy that says that AIDS may be bad, but condoms are worse, that there has to be a pushback, there has to be a resistance. I'm the least of these. I don't think there's anything particularly new about it. We all agree on one proposition, which was that our great late friend, Stephen Jay Gould, himself a tremendous educator and paleontologist, was wrong when he said that science and religion are non-overlapping magisteria. We do believe that essentially these things are incompatible, or at any rate very, very difficult to reconcile. I did quarrel with some of my comrades by saying I thought that to call ourselves brights would be, in the first place, very conceited, and in the second place, very misleading. We do not say of people who disagree with us that they are stupid. Many very, very intelligent people have been persuaded by Thomas Aquinas' ontological arguments for the existence of God, for example. It's not an IQ question. I thought it was a false issue, and I'm rather glad to see it gone into some kind of eclipse recently. let's see, 1984 was not a manual. Excellent name. If you were the Prime Minister of the UK, what would you do to combat religious extremism? Also, can and should the UK government try to encourage atheism? And if so, how? Well, combating extremism is not done very easily if you grant its first premise. What the Labour government in Britain has been doing is trying to find ways of negotiating with the fairly large settlement of Muslim citizens in the UK, mainly from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and it's made what I think is the historic mistake of assuming that these communities are represented by their mosques and by their mullahs, instead of by their teachers, by their community leaders, and others. And this has been a terrible concession. It's led as far as the head of the Anglican Church, Rowan Williams, head of the Church of England, actually is saying that there should be separate courts for Muslims, Sharia courts in the United Kingdom. In other words, giving up the essential idea that the law is the same for everybody and everybody is equal under that law. Saying, not if you're a Muslim, you can go to your own court. Now, we have in Britain now cases of honor killings of girls who are said to have disgraced their families, say by marrying out of Islam or marrying out of the clan. We have forced marriages, we have imported marriages. People go back and effectively buy brides in Pakistan. We have instances of genital mutilation of female children. This kind of thing is not, I think, to be excused as a cultural difference. It is to be brought within the ambit of the law and to be judged as if it would be if it was a non-Muslim person doing it. So the surrender by the Labour government to clerical forces in this matter, and by the Church of England, is a terrible concession, a terrible appeasement that I think the whole society will soon come to regret. Dingle Dog has a heartfelt question for me saying that he, or I guess it can't be she if it's Dingle Dog, is a nationally ranked policy debater in college, and despite years of debating, practice and research, I'm occasionally stumped by a question asked by my opponent. Has there ever been a question asked for which you had no good answer? And if so, what is your typical strategy in dealing with those situations? Well, in principle, that number of questions should be going up, because Socrates tells us that the only definition of being educated, let alone learned, is to begin to understand how little you know. And it's only when you have grazed on the lower slopes